Hello everyone, Kevin here, flying out the Fury Mark I for the very first episode of Tier by Tier. Now, the way this video series is going to go, as I turn back on the HUD and you see the world flooded with red and blue, the way this video series is going to go is I want to talk a bit about the Plains of War Thunder. Now, when I say I want to talk a bit about the Plains of War Thunder, I mean all of them. Every single one, starting from Tier 1 with the reserve plains, all the way up, if I make it that far, to Tier 5 jet gameplay. Now, this is a huge undertaking. It's going to be very difficult, but I feel it's worth it because sometimes it can be very hard to find information on a certain plane that maybe you want to fly out, but you're not sure how, or you're not sure how it stacks up against other planes that it'll be flying against. And sometimes the information you find is outdated, sometimes the information you find just isn't correct, or there's no information out there at all. So I really wanted to try and fill in the gaps as best as I could. Now, I'm not the best pilot, I'm not the most knowledgeable when it comes to aviation history, but I'm going to do my best. I've done my research as best that I could, and I'm going to try to bring quality videos to you guys about that sort of thing. Any help you would like to give is greatly appreciated, as I accidentally shoot off my machine guns. Any help you want to give is greatly appreciated, and I'll see if I can make these videos entertaining and insightful for you guys. Now, one thing specifically that I want to talk about, and excuse me, my throat is a little sore. I've been sick, so I'll try to be as good with my voice as I can, not coughing or anything like that. But one thing I think it's important to take a look at is how the planes work in realistic battles. I won't be doing these videos in arcade mode, and I won't be doing them in simulator battles. And the reason why is because there's too much variance in between those two things to get a solid idea of how the plane performs in all three modes. So realistic battles seems to be the splitting point where if you know how it performs in realistic battles, you know kind of how it performs in arcade mode to an extent, and you know kind of how it performs in simulator battles to an extent. Now, this is sort of a compromise, but it's also the game mode that I fly the most, that I'm most comfortable in, and it's probably the game mode that most people watching these videos will be interested in. So that's the reason why I chose that. Now, onto the plane. So we have in front of us the Fury Mark I. As you can see right here, this plane was first developed as the Hawker Hornet, I believe, in the early 1930s, and actually 1930, I believe so, and was designated as the Hawker Fury Mark I and given its first flight in March 25th of 1931. So this is one of the older planes that you're going to find in War Thunder. I haven't checked them all out, but I think this might be the single oldest plane. So that's kind of cool. But in addition to being the oldest plane, it's actually quite good. Now, we do have the issue above us of there being clouds at roughly 3,000 meters. Should be kind of difficult to find people that aren't this I-15 down there. But it is a very good plane. It was developed as a fast bomber interceptor. It was the first plane flown by the RAF that could top out above 200 miles per hour in level flight. You probably won't see that too much in-game, but in a shallow dive you can absolutely break 200 miles per hour, or coming out of a dive you can hold around 200 miles per hour very easily. As you can see right now, basically level flight up to 190, still gaining a little bit of speed. So it is a very fast plane as far as reserve planes are concerned. Much faster than, say, the HE-51s, which are the German planes, and a little bit faster than the I-15s, which are the Russian planes. I'm not sure how they stack up against the Ki-10s, as the Ki-10s are actually biplanes from about 1936 or 1937. And on their stat card, they are faster, but I'm not sure how that translates in-game. So one of the fastest reserve planes right here tops out above 200 miles per hour, better than 250 or so in a dive. So very good against other reserve planes. Obviously, when you get to things like the Hurricane down there, which I believe has crashed, those will break 300 miles per hour in a dive with no problem at all. So you're not going to be as fast as those planes. But something you have to remember with the reserve planes is they're not just sort of cheap throwaways for new players to smash into each other. They are actual planes that saw combat, so they do have strengths and weaknesses to them. I want to see what that guy behind him is. They do have strengths and weaknesses to them. And, okay, so that's an AI. And we're going to see right now if I can show some of those strengths off. Here we go. Okay, so this is an I-15WR. This is one of the better performing Russian reserve planes. If this was a M22, I wouldn't have too much problem, but the WR actually has a very good engine on it, as well as having those really good 4 Russian machine guns. Now there's somebody else around here. I didn't want that to be the case. There's an AI around here, and they just don't care, really, about my safety, so... That was very close. He's actually behind me, technically. But I'm going to roll over here and basically stall, but there's somebody else now, and I can't tell if that was... Yep, this is an I-16. That's a Type 18, which is something that I'm not going to be able to really handle. So I'm going to go into a defensive spiral here. My wings are pretty bad. I'm going to cut the throttle and see if I can just kind of squeeze inside their turning circles or catch them coming around the opposite direction. But there's just too many of them at this point, and I don't think I'm going to be able to get away. I would be able to get away if it was just the I-15, but now that I-16 is here, I can't outrun him. So I'm going to have to do some fancy flying here to see if I can escape this, which doesn't seem likely. Again, having AI is really the big issue, because that's just one more thing I have to worry about. And unfortunately, in 1.39, the AI was overhauled. Oh boy! The AI was overhauled, and I'm going to go down here. So, they're a little bit more deadly. But, as you can see, the the planes that you're going to be flying against are fairly equal, with the I-15WR being essentially the most contemporary plane of those. Although the I-16 was still in existence when the Fury Mark I was being used, but you have to make sure that you're not getting trapped like I did. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult to combat them. So we're going to move on now, and we're going to fly out the Fury Mark II. And this is a significantly different plane, so you're going to want to pay attention. All right, so here we are flying out the Fury Mark II, and it is immediately apparent as soon as you fly this in a realistic battle, after flying the Mark I, that it is far superior. It's much faster, it climbs much better, and it should. Mostly because, while it uses the same type of engine as the Fury Mark I, which is a Kestrel engine, the Mark I used a Kestrel II, which put out 525 horsepower, whereas the Fury Mark II uses a Kestrel 4 engine, which puts out 640. So there's a significant performance increase as far as engines are concerned with the Fury Mark II. That made it even faster, made it climb even better. As you can see, the climb rate is pretty good, pretty darn good for a biplane, actually. And it is a solid plane. I would recommend using this over the other British Reserve planes simply because of that speed advantage. That's really what you're going to be using flying British Reserve planes against other reserve planes, is that speed advantage. You have it over the HE-51, over the P-26, you have it over the I-15s, and really it's just a very good plane. Something you do have to watch out for is some planes like the I-15s will turn much better than you do. Even the HE-51s will turn better than you do, but as long as you fly this thing a little bit more like an energy fighter as opposed to a boom and zoom plane or a bespoke turn fighter, it can be incredibly effective against other reserve planes and other low tier planes as well. So it may not be able to outfly an Ishak, an I-16, or an Ishak, depending on how you say it. But it will be able to sort of keep up and keep its bearings a little bit because of that increased power to the engine. In level flight, again, gain speed very, very well, up through about 180 miles per hour, 190 miles per hour at 3,000 meters. So you won't be wanting for speed, and it really helps keep a solid energy advantage, which is what you want when flying this plane. So it does still use the same machine guns as the Fury Mark I, and those are the 7.7 millimeter Vickers Mark IV machine guns. It has 600 rounds per gun. It has two of them, so it's got 1,200 rounds, and they are fairly good as far as armament is concerned on the reserve planes. I would probably say that they're probably on par with the machine guns for the HE-51, which are 7.92 millimeter machine guns. Probably roughly on par with those as far as damage is concerned. But they are, again, it's no 12 millimeter machine gun, which would be nice to have, but they are a solid enough armament for early tier stuff that you can really take some advantage with those planes. Now, the other advantage that the Furies have over their other counterparts, like the I-15 we see down there, is that they are entirely metal. And so instead of being, having that duralumin, front fuselage, steel duralumin fuselage with a sort of canvas back and wooden wings like the I-15 has, you have a full metal plane. So I'm not sure how it really reacts in-game. Wow, that was interesting. Instant packet loss. I'm not sure how it reacts in-game, but theoretically it should not catch fire as quickly as the I-15 or as the HE-51 or the Japanese planes, which I believe are wood and canvas as well. So theoretically it should hold up a little bit better under fire than the other planes. I-15 over there. So let's go ahead and hopefully, I would like to see how this thing performs legitimately in battle. We got Tetsuo and Shinya over here. It seems like this I-15 has actually gotten... I'm getting weird stutters. Actually gotten in behind this Gladiator. So we're going to see if we can close the gap here and help him out. Although he seems to be leaking and he's not doing too well. So as you can see, the Fury Mark II gets some pretty good dive characteristics. It's got pretty good speed. Let's see if we can... Unfortunately, I have to go after this guy a little bit because I just don't want him diving in behind me. Again, getting really awkward stops, and it doesn't seem to have anything to do with my ping, which is fairly decent, or the packet loss, which again, not really present. So let's go ahead and... got a whole lot of nothing out of that guy, so we're going to turn away and hopefully just speed off right here. As you can see, we're gaining speed very quickly, which is good because I dropped a whole lot in trying to pursue these guys and trying to roll away, but I didn't quite get the full roll that I wanted. So here we have Shinya again. I know people are probably getting mad because I'm going after AI, but one thing about the new update, the 1.39 update, is that AI is a lot more dangerous now, especially early on, because once they're done attacking their ground targets, they do go after player targets, and they pursue them doggedly. They do not like players. I got shot down by swarming AI in the last game I played, and it was pretty ugly. So as you can see, in this Fury Mark I, or Mark II rather, we've got I-15s here, and we are pulling away from them handily, which is very nice, all while climbing at a fairly decent pace. So it's a good early tier plane to fly. I would say it's probably the best of the reserve planes. If you want to fly a British reserve plane in realistic battles, fly this one. Where's this guy going? There it is. Took a lot more shots than I wanted, but here we are pulling away from this guy at 250 miles an hour in level flight, and only barely losing speed. So that's one of the advantages of this Fury Mark II that you can have, And it's probably the way you're going to want to fly it if you're fighting against other reserve planes. Now, obviously, I don't really want to go head-on. But I want to see if I can get... There we go. Get him to make a wide turn. Got some hits, but nothing spectacular. It is fairly maneuverable. You will... I greatly suggest, as with any other plane, checking out some ACM, some aerial combat maneuvers. I'm not exactly proficient. Whoa. Alright. Well, I'm not exactly proficient in them. But even a rudimentary knowledge will help you immensely flying in realistic battles. And this is something you don't want to do, which is just spray at an AI. So I am now out of ammo. So I'm going to return back to the base. I just wanted to sort of show a little bit what the Fury could do as far as how you really want to fly it. As you can see, we got Tetsuo coming after us now. And that is that's the I-15WR. So that's actually the I-15 with the largest engine, or the reserve I-15 with the largest engine. So that's the one that would catch us if one were to catch us, and it's not even close. You see, we're actually gaining altitude and we're gaining speed at 230 miles per hour. So this is an exceptional plane for early tier stuff. Definitely check it out if you want to fly the reserve planes. I will pick the video back up after I've rearmed, and we will take it from there. Here we are back over the battlefield. Quite a bit of fire down there. Have to imagine there's somebody around. Being asked to reduce my speed at about 280 miles per hour, and that looks like an SU-2, and he's going to be our next target. I know he's coming around the other way, and can't really... There he is. Let's try and drop down. Okay, well, alright, well, bye. Another I-15, so we're actually going to try and gain some altitude back. Sorry about the sniffling. As I said, I'm sick and trying to avoid it. So we got the I-15 over there. He's actually diving down, so we're going to turn around on him and see if we can get the advantage, because I know we'll be faster than he is if we start to dive. So I'm going to take into a slow, shallow dive and just kind of track him here. Play with the throttle a little bit. Don't want to come in too fast. Go. Yes, perfect. And start taking shots. Now I'm going to do a little bit different. So he's flying out an I-15R. We are much faster than an I-15R. It's not even close, to be honest. I'm climbing at 192, 190. Just about. I'm not sure that he can hit that speed level flight without some serious run-up. So he will not catch us. So we're going to sort of bait him a little bit into doing what we want and see if we can catch some serious altitude advantage over him. Try and get him to climb faster than he's able, in order to catch up with us. See, he's already 2.5 kilometers away. So we're going to do one of these. Just see what we can do. Taking care of this guy. We're gonna go a little offset here. Climb up again, and then try and roll a bit. Rolled too soon. That's fine. Except I let him get on my tail, I think. Oh boy, I didn't even know that guy had left. I thought he was away. Well, that's a good thing he was there, because I got my roll thrown off by the mouse view thing, and I would have been turned to dust. But as you can see, Fury Mark II, very good plane. Definitely something to check out. So let's go ahead and check out the last of the British Reserve planes, the Nimrod Mk I. Okay, so here we are with the Nimrod Mk I. Now this is a little bit different than the Furies, because the Nimrod was developed as a carrier-based fighter. So while in-game, you'll probably spend most of your time taking off from airstrips and things like that, the Nimrod was actually developed to be placed on a carrier. Now, it does have the same armament as the other two planes, those Vickers 7.7mm machine guns. And it has, I believe, the same engine as the Fury Mark I. Now, this was developed and released and put into service, or however you want to say it, in 1932. And that makes it roughly the contemporary of the Fury Mark I, and roughly the contemporary of other planes it might be flying with, or if you're in arcade mode flying against, like the P-26, the P-shooter, was roughly a 1932 plane as well, I believe. So, again, with or at least two of the British planes, they are a lot earlier planes than some of the others, but they do perform still fairly well. I think, as far as the Nimrod is concerned, probably not the best choice for if you want to fly out a reserve plane. Again, I think that goes to the Fury Mark II, but it's still an adequate plane, still flies all right. You have to remember, once again, that these planes were still used in combat, and they are still viable options for flyouts. Now, as with some of the other planes, especially heavier planes, to note that the Nimrod, I believe, is heavier than either of the Furies. It might be around the same weight as the Fury Mark II. I would have to check on that, and I don't really know, perhaps, for sure. I know the takeoff weight for the Nimrod is roughly 4,000 pounds. I can always check on the Fury Mark II. But I believe it's some 350 pounds more, if not even more, than the Fury Mark II. So what that means as far as flying it is you're going to have to be traveling faster to gain more altitude. Heavier planes tend to gain altitude better at higher speeds, rather than lighter planes, which can sort of sacrifice some of that forward momentum and transfer it more easily into altitude. But you're going to want to climb at a higher speed in the Nimrod than you would in either of the Furies, so that's just something to keep in mind. You'll be flying against the same opponents as the Furies, without a doubt. So these I-16s, you'll be flying against I-15s. Those seem to be the most popular enemies that I've found. I've very rarely flown against Germans, and almost never against Japan, and I'm not sure quite why that is, Probably has more to do with the queuing system than it does any sort of battle rating thing. Now, here we have an I-16 coming up on our tail, and that is going to be incredibly dangerous. I'm going to try and turn around and see if I can't get almost like a defensive loop, so he doesn't really have much to shoot at. That seems to be my go-to move when trying to avoid a plane coming from behind, is to get it to do one of those, turn it around, and see if we can start a turn fight. This is going to be dangerous. And because if I can start a turn fight with a faster plane, I will have a slight advantage, as long as he doesn't try and do anything too fancy. And obviously, that was a poor choice. Fighting two I-16s, especially when one is a Type 24, you're not probably going to be able to do that in any reserve plane. The I-16s are really very powerful early game planes. Fast, maneuverable, good armament. Probably one of the best Tier 1 planes out there. I'd put it right on par with like a Hurricane Mark I. And that's all personal stuff. But I really don't have an option to get away from these guys. But, like I've said, the Nimrod is a heavier plane you're going to want to climb at a higher speed. I can outdive this I-16 for a short period of time, but I will rip my wings long before he does. And let's see if I can just go full loop and have him. There we go. I'll try to get a kill before I have to, call it quits from death. But I'm pretty well damaged right now, so evading these guys for much longer isn't going to happen. That seems to have killed it. Lost a control surface. Not doing so hot. Let's see if I can turn in on this I-15 before I die. Nope, as I just take out the side of that building. But like I said, if you're going to be flying out the British Reserve planes, I highly suggest flying out the Fury Mark II. If you want to fly out the Nimrod, just climb at a higher speed than you would in the Fury, or a higher base speed. You may not be able to climb at a higher speed than the Fury just because of the Fury's increased power station, that more powerful engine. The Fury Mark I is going to be on par with other things like the HE-51, and while it's not a bad choice, there are better choices. If you want to fly the Mark I, feel free. Fly it very similarly to the Mark II. It doesn't quite have the same speed, but against other reserve planes, you should be able to outpace them fairly well. The only issue you might have is with the Ki 10s and the Ishaks, or not the Ishaks, the Shaikas, the I-15s. But all in all, the British Reserve planes are fairly good, and it's slightly odd because they don't fly very much like the other planes that you might think of as far as Britain is concerned, with like the Spitfires, which are very good turning planes, whereas it's actually the same case with the Japanese reserve planes, where you will find that their early planes are more speed-based, and as you go down the line into things like the Zeros, or if you're in this particular case, the Spitfires, you're actually going to be doing more turn fighting. But the Fury Mark II, very good energy fighter for Tier 1, fairly fast, fairly maneuverable. The armament is decent, I'd say mildly adequate, so feel free to check those out. Feel free to tell me if I've gotten anything wrong. Again, this is the very first episode. I'm doing my best to try and get as much factual information and as much flight information as I can into these videos, but I may get stuff wrong. I probably did get stuff wrong. Feel free to correct me. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up, or give me a a follow or a subscription or whatever you want to call it. And help me out with future videos if you can. But until then, I will see you all later.